We've got ourselves another Nittany Game Week Zoom, and this time the subject is name, image, and likeness. So we brought in an expert for this subject, and that's from Team Altemus. That's Courtney Altemus. Courtney, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I hope you have a couple hours because I love to talk about name, image, and likeness.
Well, I think this is a subject that is definitely being discussed more and more. So yeah, we're gonna be calling on you a little bit more often when it comes to this. But let's start with this first and foremost. How did you get involved with it? And then, this is something that, the boosters used to never be involved with student athletes. That was a taboo subject. That's not the case now with these NIL deals and how that's working with recruiting. So talk about how much that's sinking into the recruiting part of what's happening with college football and college athletes in general. And who's being the most aggressive on the front when it comes to that subject?
Well, that subject is, I will say just really quickly, yes, it's impacting recruiting, no question about it. And you can even see it in some of the media that we see. Take a quick step back. I am involved through my company, Team Altemus, and the company, we started it as a pure pro athlete consulting business to help professional athletes vet. Financial advisor. I had had a career on Wall Street. I saw the need for it. I saw the need to bridge the knowledge gap. And once we started doing it, every athlete to a person said, I wish I had learned this in college. So we started the collegiate programming well before name, image, and likeness. And the NCAA brought us in for the elite athlete symposiums to prepare those young men, football players and men's basketball players for their last season pre-draft. And so we were already getting collegiate athletes ready for what we knew pro athletes faced, and I worked with for over 25 years and still work with. And so immediately in November or October of 2019, when NCAA said that they were going to go with name, image, and likeness comp, we knew that student athletes needed a ton of help, and so did the staff. They're not trained for any of this, so prompted us to start financial literacy, due diligence education. And financial literacy is such a broad term, but we help very focused acutely right now, obviously on taxes as the 1099 start to roll in. But knowing what professional athletes face, the onslaught of people coming at them, helping these student athletes filter through all of that, understand what it means to be an independent contractor, what's a 1099, very, very basic. And then as we move forward, we'll be helping those student athletes that are, actually making money, learn about investments, et cetera. Due diligence, for all the obvious reasons, none of them have ever had to filter through people coming at them, boosters included, because they, as you said, were never allowed to talk to them. So that's how I'm involved. We are on campus all over the country, so we are immersed with the athletes and the staff, which is really helpful because we're able to see real time what's happening. And with some of these boosters, like I said, it's absolutely filtering into the recruiting conversation. Now, from the NCAA's perspective, coaches, recruiters, anybody on that team, they're not allowed to entice with a guaranteed deal, as we know. However, they can refer to deals that existing student athletes have signed. They can talk about, different businesses in their cities. So at any given point in time, depending on what the school rules are, because some of the school rules are a little bit more relaxed than others, and state rules about what coaches and recruiters can talk about, they can really give a good sense to the student athlete and their family of, what they might see at that school. Again, not being able to guarantee it. And definitely not, aware certainly of any program that has guaranteed anything. I know NCAA is looking into the two situations, one at Memphis, one at Miami, for different reasons. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure anything is going to be deemed wrong in those situations. But I think it does give a good example of times when there are recruiting advantages, and these schools can point to those. And when they're talking to families about young men and young women coming to school, what they may or may not be able to access. And I think, I'll talk about one of the, at least reported, most aggressive programs being Memphis men's basketball. And I'm totally comfortable talking about it because it's in the news every day. But you have kind of a perfect storm of attractive situations there with, Penny Hardaway and bringing in Larry Brown and Rashid. And so there's this whole NBA contingent surrounding those young men. So any of them who are thinking they're one and done are getting primed for the NBA. They could talk about companies that are right there, FedEx. You could allow families to draw conclusions. So there's a couple of different layers there. And Penny Hardaway has said he saw it as a great advantage, not necessarily versus other schools, but versus the G League. That the G League, once they introduced that contract where basketball players were going to be able to be compensated, a lot of them were starting to forego college. And that was a major competitor for college coaches and recruiting teams. It comes up in every recruiting discussion. I love the schools and the staff that ask us for talking points to talk about the program around education, protective education, how they're helping their prospective student athletes filter through people. But that's not the sexy stuff. That's not the money-making grab in the conversation.
Courtney, one of the schools you mentioned, Miami, one of the schools you're working with, and they were one of the first schools where we really saw a collective marketing for the whole deal, for the whole team become a reality. And some people argue that's just a way for boosters to pay players with no regard for fair market value. As you look to the future, do you think boosters and companies are going to look at these collective deals and ultimately start to look for a real return on investment in these deals, or just simply say, you know what, we don't care if my team's winning, I feel like a team owner?
I think the ROI, the return on investment, is going to win the day in the long run. There's certainly going to be a lot of, I don't care, my team's a winner. I mean, if you look at the Miami example, Dan Lambert set up that company specifically to connect Miami football players, not even Miami student athletes, but Miami football players to opportunities. So, I think he set up the company, it's called Bring Back the U. So it's really clear what it was set up for. And there's even on the website, there's a 2022 fundraising page. And so I think, even though they weren't calling it a collective then, since we've seen other schools come out with them, it absolutely was. It may have only been funded by one guy at that point, I'm not sure. And it's fun and exciting. I think, a couple of things you brought up. The fair market value piece is a dangerous piece for a couple of reasons. One is we haven't determined fair market value. Is $500 a month for those scholarship players to promote on social media high, low, indifferent? I don't know. Seems like it might be reasonable, but I don't know anything about that business. So there's part of that. We're settling into fair market value, and can the University of Miami use that as an advantage? I don't know. I guess that's part of what the NCAA is looking into. But I also think as look at these situations, one thing they need to be really, really careful about is making sure that they're not giving impermissible benefits, meaning just giving money for no service. And so when you look at, never happens.
Never happens.
But if you look at like University of Texas, they have a $10 million collective right now. They have a CEO running the collective, and they talk a lot about internships. I forget what they call them, learn internships or something like that. And so it's a great way to set up filtering some conversations and bringing some ideas of careers beyond professional sports, because we know less than 2% of them will play professional sports. But I'm not sure who set up to track that the athletes have actual learn-ternships set up and they're getting there. So I think fair market value, avoiding the pay for play, making sure that there's permissible benefits involved. Those are going to be two issues. And then I think, to your question, there's the people who have a lot of money to give to these collectives have a lot of money because they've been really smart about investing. And at the end of the day, if the ROI is not there, winning's going to be winning, or losing's going to be losing, But I do think there will be an element of it's new, it's fun. I think there'll be some programs that get funded that start winning out of nowhere, which is going to be sort of fun to watch, because we are going to see some advantages. And some family makes, they'll make decisions for different reasons. So I think the booster, the other thing I get a little bit concerned about with the boosters is, how much influence, and I know this has always been a concern, but they have over the actual program. And as we're seeing, I think you coined the term, Jay. If you didn't, I'm giving you credit for it, the coaching carousel. How much is that going to influence all of that? And noting direct dollars being funded too, and how much is it going to influence our free agency? I mean, transfer portal. So
Exactly.
it's going to be interesting to watch. I think we'll see more though.
Courtney, this is Tom Bradley. My question is this: as a student athlete starts making deals, what are some of the things they need to be careful about, and how best can they be sure they have done their due diligence? Because even the pro athletes, they get burned too.
Absolutely. It's a great question. And it's one of the main reasons I started the business, because of that. One of the things we tell them is they have to obviously do very thorough upfront due diligence, which arguably many of them don't have time to do adequately. But what they don't know, what they have to pay attention to, is the ongoing monitoring. You look at so many of the horror stories around professional athletes. Most times it's not a fraudulent person looking to commit fraud and steal from that athlete. It's somebody who the athlete trusts, and the relationship starts off well and it goes south, and it goes south quickly. So with those two elements, we educate them on filtering all of the calls and incoming inquiries, and then what to look for, and then what to look for going forward. And we actually bring in technology, and it's interesting, since NIL has started and without a uniform rule, schools love this technology. I'll explain why in a second. They've gone from, oh my God, we have to have that, to if the students want it, okay, because they're so scared to even appear as if they're keeping student athletes from opportunities. So if they're giving student athletes this great tool to help filter people, are they maybe keeping them from opportunities? So it's a really easy tool. We just take the information they've used to disclose the opportunity, and it goes into technology, goes out and scrubs over 100,000 public databases, uses AI on that person or that company to determine any kind of language that could suggest anything from fraud to reputational issues. So, most of the time it kicks back a risk score to the student athlete. It's also a learning tool. And then once they've been scored, it's up to the student athlete if they want to actually work with this person or not. And then it's set up for ongoing monitoring. So for the next year, that technology is running that person or that company every single day. So we'll be notified, student athlete will be notified if something comes up. It's also a great layer of risk mitigation for the school, because if, God forbid, somebody who that student athlete met on their campus steals from them, and they come back in 3 years and say, I met this person on your campus. Well, we had a protocol, we had resources, here's what you decided, and we're not liable. It takes too much time for any student athlete to do any deal, to do it all by themselves. And there's a lot of that happening, obviously, because they don't know any different. So I hope we can get more people using it by an organic process, and not because we have a negative story to talk about and then everybody's running to it.
Courtney, I was at Big Ten College Football Media Days, and it was really fascinating to hear the coaches make their pitches as they were answering questions about NIL. Oh, well, we're near a big city and we have plenty of opportunities. Oh, well, we're the only game in town, so the kids will have plenty of opportunities. Ultimately, though, it came out, Nick Saban right away, hey, our quarterback, Bryce Young, has a 7-figure deal already in place. So, you know, they're not being shy about letting this information out there. How many big dollar deals are really took place in this first season of college football or are out there in other sports? And do you see this as a rarity or becoming the norm?
I would say just in general, obviously not many big dollar deals. If you look at the open doors and influencer numbers as of November 30th, average deal size per student athlete, now this is beyond football obviously, is either 12 or 1300 per student athlete, depending on which numbers you look at. I think we're going to see more big deals. I think companies are going to start being a little bit more selective. But one thing that was interesting that happened throughout the football season, every single weekend, we were getting calls by parents. Parents usually of football players who maybe hadn't done a big deal or many deals yet, and they had an amazing game or an amazing play. And all of a sudden their followers are up. People are, you know, they're just hounding them. And we saw that as a potential coming into the season. So we were able to try to direct them accordingly. But I think that we'll see, you know, if you look at like the Bose headphones deal, there's one basketball player, but 5 or 6 football players. And obviously they're the NFL provider. So they've got a great entree into, you know, who's going to make us some money. And those are, I don't know the full dollar amount of all those deals, but they're high dollar deals. And I think you'll see companies like that, maybe some of the endorsements from the professional leagues coming in and be selective. Look at, you know, Gatorade, the very first collegiate athlete to endorse Gatorade is a female basketball player. Steph Curry, his first collegiate shoe, is a female basketball player. So, you know, we're seeing bigger and bigger and bigger deals. I don't think it will ever be this massive money-making opportunity that just is, you know, across all student athletes. I think we'll see really savvy student athletes deciding they want to make a lot of money and they'll go after it. And we're going to see really savvy student athletes who don't have a full scholarship. They want to leave college without debt. So they're going to run those camps and clinics. They're going to, you know, sell their clothing or whatever it is to make sure that they make enough money to be debt-free when they leave.
So now you've been in this for a little while, you know, we're going almost through a full football season, a basketball season. What kind of pressures are you seeing on student athletes now that a lot of families are seeing the potential? And you just alluded to the fact that parents are calling you, but they see potential for money. And obviously in some situations, that's going to put a lot of pressure on the students. How are they dealing with it? How are you guys helping them?
It's really hard right now because there's very little direct pressure, but you can see it. You know, when I get the calls from the parents, they're obviously trying to help their children, but then there are also some parents who are already setting up LLCs for the parents to make money off of the deals because they're helping manage the process. And so you have to, as a kid, an 18 to 22-year-old kid, there's no way that pressure doesn't filter down. We have done a lot of parent sessions, and I think that those have been highly effective because the way to diffuse it is to start talking about the realities of time commitment, money, due diligence, and the likelihood of making a lot of money. And parents, at the end of the day, they want to do what's right for their kids. So education with them goes a long, long way. And so many parents we've talked to, we always ask the question, you know, are you excited about this? How you feeling about it? To a group, oh, we were really excited when we first heard about it, and now we're overwhelmed. So, you know, I think we have sessions where we work with the student athletes specifically on how to talk to family members. We've always done it for professional athletes. And, you know, we coach them to be positive and constructive and be thinking about, you know, staying focused on what's the best plan for me. I always say a million times, it's your name, it's your image, it's your likeness. If it goes well, it's going to be great. If something goes wrong, nobody's going to help you. Your school can't come in and help you. So we keep trying to reiterate that. We do some mock interviews where we have, conversations between a mock agent and a student athlete and talk about parents. So, it's effective. I just wish we could get to more. And we've done a couple of parent and student athlete mixed sessions. And we had a really funny one with a Power 5 men's basketball team. The guys were getting car deals. And, you can imagine a dealership wanting endorsements is not going to give a used car most times. It's going to be a pretty flashy, noticeable car. And so we asked the student athletes about insurance. And one of the, probably definitely starting 5, maybe top 2 players on the team said, "Oh, well, I think my parents pay for that, and they'll just keep paying." And his father was on the call, and he was like, "No." So it sparks really constructive conversation. I wish we could talk to more of them and ease and alleviate that pressure that the student athletes have to be inevitably feeling.
Courtney, well, how hard has it been for the athletes you're working with to balance the academics of school, their sports and their training, and now what essentially is a business venture as they start earning money with NIL? How do they get that all done?
It's hard. It's really hard. We've had a couple of panic calls. I didn't make it to my appearance. What do I do? Because if you sign a contract, you can't call whoever you sign the contract with and say, "Oh, I have a final tomorrow and a home game tonight." And as much as we talk to them about that ahead of time, it's really hard, obviously, then to put it into practice. So we're seeing a lot of challenge with that. And we've seen student athletes pull back. We actually always ask the question when we're on campus before we start any workshop. For those of you who are not, well, we always ask, are you participating in NIL, or do you definitely plan to? And if you're not, are you a no, or are you unsure? To a campus, 40% of student athletes are unsure. And when you ask them why, it's 2 reasons, one of 2 reasons. I don't know enough. I'm scared about my schedule. So the good news is there's a lot of student athletes who are being smart and taking their time and considering options. But it's 3 full-time jobs. And we talked to them about the fact that they have 2 full-time jobs now, and it's adding a 3rd. So it's going to be a challenge.
So last question, we got about 8 minutes left in the Zoom, so I think we'll be fine to get it in. But I wanted to ask you more about the financial literacy part. It's actually something that I really enjoy doing. I love doing JA with my kids, junior achievement through school. And it's amazing how little that we all are taught about mortgages, about, car deals. You mentioned insurance, that type of stuff. So when you bring up financial literacy, and I know you've already been doing this stuff with the NCAA and with schools and that type of stuff, what are some of the things that jump out to the students that are attention grabbers? Because it could probably feel like another class to them. You know what I mean? Like they're in class again, learning about financial literacy, but those are the tools that they take beyond school for the rest of their life.
Absolutely. And you see the looks on their faces. They come in, and if it, like, they all have little clouds over their heads that say boring, and they are not happy to be there. It's another, and we tell them right away, you're in film rooms, you're in school, and this is going to be fun. And you see the eyes rolling, but we don't let them sit for more than 2 minutes. We have them up out of their chairs. So they don't even know, if we say this is financial, about yet. We teach through processes, repeatable processes, many of which they're likely already using. And we do that so that they can then apply those processes to whatever we're talking about. Okay, strategize, innovate, execute. You do that every day in school and in your sport. Apply it to budgeting. Don't make budgeting a whole new thing. Let's just apply that so that hopefully, and we talk to them about this a lot, it does carry through for the rest of their lives. That 40% of student athletes who don't know, the varying percentage of student athletes who say, definitely not, I'm not participating. Any international student athlete in the room cannot participate. So we have to make it relevant. And, you know, as much as we say at the beginning, lessons for life, they hear that all the time. So we teach by process, experience, and kind of reiterating the themes. You know, within 5 minutes, they are, you know, sometimes we do like a Family Feud style game show. They get to take their phones out, which is exciting, and they hit a QR code from the screen, and then they're yelling answers, and it becomes really fun. But I would say the number one, as far as money goes, number one concern topic that we get the most reaction about is taxes, because they don't know anything about it, nor should they. And then recently it's been cryptos and NFT, and we're doing a lot of education around that and the volatility of the crypto market, exchanging it for cash. Social media followers do not translate one for one into NFT collectors. I would say though, the tax element is just, we kind of can't say it enough. And now, you know, we've been really proactive this whole weekend reaching out, because 1099s are going to roll in before the end of the month. So, and you don't want to be in the middle of March Madness and have a kid totally lost, or, you know, baseball season, you know, baseball, basketball, women's basketball is actually behind football. Women's basketball, believe it or not, has the highest revenue numbers, and then comes men's basketball, then women's volleyball. So those are the top four. And if they're not in season, they're obviously training. So, you know, April 15th is a really tough deadline for all student athletes.
Well,
Yeah, there was one story you told me, I know we're wrapping up, but they do a life simulation game. And one of the guys had a kid, and he's like, "Oh my God, these are really expensive." I'm like, "No kidding, folks."
Yeah, they have to. They have so much fun. It's like a carnival, and they have to. They all get assigned a draft pick, and their 4-year contract. You know, they have no idea that they have to divide by 4 taxes. We always make it an LA team, so it's the highest state tax rate. And then they have to make transportation, food, and housing decisions in the group. And then they go around to different stations, and there are different expense stations. But we always stop periodically and have them roll dice. And 2 of the numbers, 5 and 6, we say, "Congratulations, you just had a baby. You know, you owe, for the men's, you owe $7,000 a month for the next 18 years. And I was telling Jay a story about one of the guys this summer who rolled for 2 babies, and he was like, "I already have a kid." They're all pretend kids, but and part of that too speaks to why we get them moving. They are athletes. They're going to learn through engaging in competition, and we make it as real as possible.